and welcome back to the Artful Chef. Miss M here. We are in my classroom today doing our video. So if you were in my Art 1 class last year, you learned mark making. However, I do have some students who were not in my class last year, in my class this year for Art 2 and 3. So if you do not know what mark making is, you will be able to find the video that I have on mark making in the description. And you will need to watch that video to understand what mark making is. So today, Van Gogh is our inspiration. That's why I have my Van Gogh picture on my shirt. Van Gogh is the artist of the week, and so we are recreating our, sorry, I had a little gnat on me. We are recreating our version of a starry night landscape. So you will need colored pencil, preferably a black, and a piece of paper. If you don't have colored pencils, you can use a regular pencil to do this project. I'm going to give you a couple different options on how to do this. So you will need two pieces of paper, one for your art piece and one that you're going to actually tear. So let's get started. For your video for today, we are going to be practicing with colored pencil and pen and paper. So if you have watercolor pencils at home, you can use a watercolor pencil and some paint brushes to create your mark making. If you do not have watercolor pencils at home, you can just use a colored pencil and a pen and you can get the same effect. But for those of you who will be in class, you will be using watercolor pencils and we will be exploring that option. I'm going to begin by, I have a sheet of just regular copy paper that is a little smaller than my art paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace the outside of this so I can create kind of a border that we're going to work within for our main project. So our main project will go on the art paper, of course. If you are working in a sketchbook, do this in your sketchbook. If all you have is copy paper, you could take a ruler and make it a little bit smaller if you wanted to so that you have that border, but if you don't have that option, it's okay. So I don't know if you can see, you can't really see that line on there, but it's there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create just a simple rolling plains. We're going to be doing just some little hills, maybe some mountains. So that will be my first one, and I'm actually going to trace over that in marker so that you can see it. Okay, so there is my first hill. This is going to be in layers. So I might make my next one come maybe down here. I'll have another one that comes up, and maybe I'll have some that kind of look like mountains that come up here. So I've got a couple of different things that I can work with. Now comes the fun part. So you are going to tear along your line so that you get that nice little rough edge. I don't want you to cut it because cutting it is too smooth. It's much better to tear and have that kind of just a jagged little edge. And you don't have to tear exactly. See how I missed the line a little bit there? That's okay. We're going to work a layer at a time, starting at the bottom. All right, there is my first layer. I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to put this, I'm going to line up the bottom of this paper with that line that I drew earlier. So if you already didn't have space to draw a line, then you would just line it up with the bottom of the page. I'm going to turn it sideways so you can see. And I'm going to take my, I'm using a watercolor pencil, but if all you have is a colored pencil, use that. We're going to be working solely in black and white today. So black pencil, we're going to come along the edge here. We don't want to come backwards because we don't want to go under the edge of the paper. We just want to come off the paper, and we're going to shade all of this. So we're creating value. This is going to be our lowest value that we create. And we do want to eventually come all the way up to the top of that line there. So I'm just going to come back and fill that in. If you're coming back and forth on this side and you're not close to the edge of the paper, that's okay. Just be cautious when you are close to the edge of the paper that you don't go under the paper. So we will be layering this so it will get darker as we go, creating that darker value at the top. All right, so for sake of time, so that you don't have to sit and watch every single thing, I'm going to time lapse this so you can see the process, but you are going to look at that. See how nice that and clean that edge is where you just did that? You're going to repeat that same process, tearing each one of these lines and shading on top of what you have, creating that darker value with each time that you put a piece down. When you have torn this off and you get to this point where you're back to where this one starts, I want you to think about making sure that they line up in the right space. So just like we did with this one where we lined it up with that edge, we're going to line this one up with the edge, find where the two meet. Then you can move this one out of the way and you can continue with your shading down to this side. So now I have that beautiful second value there. We're going to tear this last piece and repeat that process. So I have a pen option for those of you at home who are not using watercolor pencil. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about what it would look like if you used a pen. So because Starry Night is my inspiration for this landscape, I want to create those really cool wavy clouds, the illusion of air breezes going through the sky. So the way that I'm going to do that is just with some dashed lines, and you can go right on top of your colored pencil. So I would have to do that a little heavier for you to see it in the video, but it's there. You can draw in trees, you can make patches of grass with your mark making techniques if you want. If you are working in colored pencil, you have the added benefit of being able to to see the really cool effects that you get from watercolor pencil. So I've got 3 different paint brushes here. I have a very fine tipped, I have an angled brush, and I have one that's a little wider. So I'm going to start with one that's not so pointy, but still kind of substantial. And I want to create the illusion that there are some tall trees on this little mountainous area right here. So I'm just going to get my brush wet. I'm going to lay it down and pull up and activate that watercolor pencil. So if you are using a pen, you could do this with your pen. Now, if you wanted your trees a little bit darker, you could always go back in with your pencil while it's wet, and you could shade that in a little bit more. That's the great thing about watercolor pencils, is you can work with them wet or dry. So I wanted those a little darker, so I'm going to get some more water on my brush here and just go over that. I want to define this mountain area right here. So I'm going to just kind of go back over where it starts and stops with some just back and forth marks. To give that definition. Now, the sky's the limit here. You can create whatever it is that you want. If you wanted to go in, like I just did with that, and create those little look of swirls going through the sky, I'm going to use my smaller paintbrush. And kind of come through here this way. And so the amount of colored pencil that you put down to begin with is also going to determine the depth of color here that you get when you start working with it. So if you put it down heavier, you're going to get a much darker, noticeable effect from your watercolor than you would if you put it on lightly like I did. You could also, to define down here, I'm going to use my angled brush this time, and I'm going to come along with my little tip, and I'm going to create some grass here to define this area of these rolling plains from that other one, so we can have that little visual separation. And you notice I'm just turning my brush random directions as I go, and this was that little spot where they kind of overlapped a little. I want to, down here, I want to have some little areas that look like grass, like I did with my pen, but I also want to have some like tall, like weedy kind of grass, the kind that twists and turns and looks a little gnarly, like in the Starry Night painting. I'm going to finish this up and we will come back. So I've done a couple of different things on here so that depending on what you have at home, you can work with different things. So I have done some mark making in pen. I've done mark making with the colored pencil and with the watercolor pencil. Now, with the watercolor or colored pencil, it really, the darker you get your values to begin with, the more vibrant your designs will be when you start doing your watercolor designs. So think about that in the process as you are doing it. If you are using a pen, I suggest using something that has a very fine tip on it like this, or a ballpoint pen. But I don't recommend using like a Sharpie because they tend to be a little too thick to get those fine little designs that you can create through mark making. Now, I always have that one student that says, Miss M, I don't have watercolors, or I don't have a pen. I am going to give you a pencil option, so you can do pencil and eraser. So check this out. Now you have a pencil version, just regular pencil. So to create your mark making with this, instead of using a pen, take your pencil eraser and erase away what you want. So you want to create those waves in the sky. Erase them. You want to give some tall trees. I do recommend blowing your pencil shavings off of your paper, because if you brush them like that with your finger, you are possibly going to spread that graphite across your paper. So if I wanted to create those little swirly things down here, I could just erase that way. I can create grass by erasing. Now, you could, another option is go in with your pencil and draw in those things with pencil. But the erasing is kind of fun. So, a couple of different options for those of you who tell me that, oh, I can't do it because I don't have the supplies. You really don't need a lot of supplies. You just need a paper and pencil. I would prefer it to be in black colored pencil or black watercolor pencil. But, you know, in these times, we take what we can get. So I look forward to seeing what you come up with on your project.